Well, that was Mark Carney at Canada House. You are watching the UK Tonight. And our first story this evening is a British paedophile who spent 27 years on the run in Thailand has now been convicted here of 97 offences, including dozens of cases of child sex abuse. Richard Burrows is a former scout leader and a boarding school housemaster who fled the UK all the way back in 1997, having stolen another man's identity. He admitted dozens of offences dating back to the 1960s and was convicted today of another 54 of them. Our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, has this.
Okay.
Richard Burrows steps off a plane at Heathrow Airport to be met by police after 27 years on the run, living in what he called paradise, a paedophile, finally about to face justice.
Is your name Richard Burrows?
Sorry?
Is your name Richard Burrows?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
From the mid-60s to the mid-90s, Richard Burrows obtained positions of trust and responsibility, which he used to abuse young boys, many of them repeatedly. James Harvey was one of his victims, indecently assaulted when he was 12. He has waived his right to anonymity to speak publicly about Burrows.
The reason why I'm doing this is for them, who, you know, to put a face to real children who from, you know, at the age of 10, 12, 13, put their trust in this man, and this is what he did to them. I want his name to be trashed in the world for everybody that ever knew him and thought that he was okay. I think he's pathetic in the true sense of the word, as in, you know, his impulses and emotions have driven everything that he's done probably throughout the whole of his life, and have left him looking like a shambling, despicable, evil human being that could casually, over 60 years, do this to children and still wake up in the morning and find a way of justifying that. So I think he's pathetic, I think he is weak. There is nothing about this man that deserves anything other than loathing.
James was one of many victims befriended by Burrows through his involvement with the Scouts and amateur radio clubs in the Midlands. Before that, he'd worked as a housemaster at a school for troubled children in Cheshire, preying on vulnerable youngsters. But after being charged in 1997, he failed to appear in court.
3 wanted faces. First, this man, Richard John Ramsey Burrows.
Over the years, police made numerous televised appeals to track him down. These were shown to the jury during the trial.
Next is 67-year-old Richard John Ramsey Burrows.
They'd prompted more victims to come forward. In 2023, facial recognition software identified Burrows as a man living under the name Peter Leslie Smith in Thailand. Burrows had stolen the identity of a sick friend to obtain a passport. Before flying back to the UK, he told his brother, not all paedophiles are the same.
I just think that's a disgusting comment to make. You know, all abuse of children has a huge impact on the victims. I think Richard Burrows appears to feel that, you know, some of what he did didn't do any harm, essentially. And what we see when we talk to the victims is that it absolutely did do harm. For the vast majority of them, that is their first sexual experience at the age of, you know, 9, 10, 11, 12. That affects a person for the rest of their life.
Is it your sense that there are probably other victims out there?
There may well be. You know, there's a lot of reasons why people have really difficult decisions to make as to whether they come forward in cases like this. But yes, it would not surprise me if, given the length of time that he offended over and, you know, the level of offending, if there were more people out there who were victims of him.
For James, there are questions about why Burrows was granted bail, allowing him those years of freedom. He also wonders if he should have done more to report Burrows.
Other people listening to this now might think, oh, I'd have behaved differently in the way, but we had no language, no framework, no understanding, no imagination that this same person that had done what he'd done to us would go on and do something so much worse to somebody else. So it's almost impossible for me to sit here and say, I wish I'd done that. There was no way that I could have done. You know, we lived in this kind of unbelievable ignorance and innocence that there were predators like this living in every single one of our institutions.
27 years late, Richard Burrows has now been convicted at Chester Crown Court. He said he came home to pay for his sins. The truth, the police say, is that he ran out of money. Some of his accusers died before seeing him face justice. A man described as an unrepentant paedophile will probably spend the rest of his life in prison. Greg Milam, Sky News.
Well, in Thailand, Burrows found an escape, a place to hide for nearly 30 years. After abusing children, as we heard in Greg's piece there, he fled the UK to avoid prosecution. But the severity of his crimes didn't compel him to live a quiet, low-profile life. Far from it. Our Asia correspondent Cordelia Lynch has our next report on that.
Richard Burrows spent nearly 30 years on the run. And this was where he built his double life, Phuket in Thailand. Everyone knew him here as Peter Smith, an identity he stole from a passport that wasn't his.
For more than 2 decades, he came here to dine out, often ordering the same dish of fish and chips. But in February last year, he suddenly told the owners he was leaving.
I'm very shocked because from my perspective, he was a good person. For the past 24 years, he had recommended our restaurant to lots of people and brought us new customers. We were so surprised when he told us he was returning to the UK and never coming back.
The man they thought they knew didn't explain why he was going. They, completely unaware, he was a paedophile and one of Britain's most wanted men.
I'm shocked. I'm so surprised. I'd never have imagined something like this could happen. I did not think he was like that.
It's easy to see how they were duped. Richard Burrows wasn't living life under the radar. Far from it. He was involved in the sailing community and worked in local media, regularly attending public events. His friends said he worked with children too, at local schools.
It is pretty staggering that he went undetected here for a quarter of a century. And yet he didn't behave, it seems, like a man in hiding. He was well known in the community and many say well liked. But recently, close friends say he had started to open up about his past.
This was where Richard Burrows lived, a container. When he left, he'd run out of money, friends say, and wanted to reunite with his family in England.
Did he ever talk about his past?
I know him 25 years now, and only about maybe three to 4 years ago, he started sort of revealing a few things that he's actually not who his passport says he is, and that he was searched for by the UK authorities for some allegations apparently he's done. And obviously it was visible that he likes the younger generation. But that it would go to minors, I would have never thought.
But he was living a lie and robbing his victims of justice for decades, enjoying a secret life in the sun as those he abused were left to deal with the impact of his horrific crimes. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Phuket, Thailand.
We'll return to that story in a minute. First, some breaking news to bring you. And Donald Trump has just said that he is going to release the files around the death of John F. Kennedy, President JFK, tomorrow. That, of course, relates to the killing of JFK famously in Dallas, Texas, back in November 1963. And Donald Trump has just said, as he had done previously, that he's going to release the files, and that will happen tomorrow. Here's what he had to say.
We're at the Kennedy Center. Needs a lot of work. We're going to fix it, make it beautiful. It's a very big part of the fabric of D.C. and the Capitol. We're bringing back the Capitol. We're bringing back our country. But while we're here, I thought it would be appropriate. We are tomorrow announcing and giving all of the Kennedy files. So people have been waiting for decades for this, and I've instructed my people that are responsible, lots of different people, put together by Tulsi Gabbard, and that's going to be released tomorrow. We have a tremendous amount of paper. You've got a lot of reading. I don't believe we're going to redact anything. I said, just don't redact. You can't redact. But we're going to be releasing the JFK files, and that would be tomorrow. Do you have anything else to add to that, Carolyn? So that's a big announcement. They've been waiting for that for decades. Then I said during the campaign I'd do it, and I'm a man of my word. So tomorrow you have the JFK files. What time will they be released? Tomorrow afternoon. Okay.
Have you seen what's in the files? Have you read them?
I've heard about them.
Was there anything interesting?
It's going to be very interesting.
Was there an executive summary supplied to you, Mr. President?
No, I'm not doing summaries. You'll write your own summaries. It's many pages. Is it 80,000 pages? Approximately 80,000 pages. So it's a lot of stuff. And you'll make your own determination.
You have
So they are, as President Trump said, after decades, files on the assassination of JFK held by the US government are going to be released tomorrow, which will surely be a big story when that comes around. In the meantime, let's return to our lead story here on the UK Tonight around the conviction of Richard Burrows, who escaped justice for 30 years, having fled the UK for Thailand. We're going to bring in Simon Bailey now, the chair of the International Policing and Public Protection Research Institute. Before that, he was the Chief Constable of Norfolk Constabulary and Child Protection Lead at the National Police Chiefs Council. Simon, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us here on Sky News this evening. The first question is, his being brought to justice now, is that a success or is it a failure that it took so long?
I think we have to recognise that it's taken way too long, and there will be victim survivors, as you've said, some of whom are no longer alive, that will be relieved that he has now been convicted and is now in prison, but will be disappointed with the amount of time that it's taken to see justice being delivered.
Because we heard in two of our reports there that victims of his were astounded that the first time they tried to bring him to justice, tried to bring him to court to face the charges, he was put on bail and he fled using someone else's identification. Could that still happen today?
I think under the circumstances, and what I can say from my years of experience, is that it's highly unusual for allegations of the nature that were made against Burrows to result in somebody or him being granted bail, and only the court will be able to explain the decision that was made that allowed him then to flee to Thailand. I think what we have to recognise is that now justice is being seen to be done, and thankfully cases of this nature are rare.
How rare are they, Simon? Because they keep appearing on our programmes, on our output. We've got him now, we've had the cases that have rocked the Church of England. People, of course, will remember the likes of Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris and plenty of these cases. You say they're rare, but how do we know that?
So forgive me, when I say rare, I'm talking about somebody being granted bail and then not being brought to justice for that period of time. These cases, as we all know, are not rare at all. And the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse that reported 2 years ago now heard evidence from over 7,000 victim survivors of abuse that they had suffered. And we all know that that is just the tip of the iceberg. The analysis that the National Police Chiefs Council has done clearly demonstrates that abuse that was being perpetrated by the likes of Burrows within institutions, within scout groups, within school environments, was in the late 70s, 80s and early 90s. Unfortunately, it was prolific. And we in recent times have had to come together with our safeguarding failures, and they were failures because in so many cases, people knew that abuse was being perpetrated. Victims, unfortunately, weren't being believed, and we now know just how important it is for victims who have been told at the time of their abuse Nobody is going to believe you, to know that when they have the courage and the confidence to make that disclosure, they are going to be believed.
Have things improved to help victims come forward and share their testimony? Because we heard from James Harvey, who was a victim of Burrows. He was a kid at the time. He's a grown man now. And the bravery of him doing that is only matched by, it seems like, the guilt he feels now at having not been able to do something sooner. Is it easier now for people to do it?
I think the way that that the safeguarding support services, the police, social care, the health service is now far better equipped, better informed, better trained to be able to deal with disclosures, and safeguarding arrangements within institutions have changed beyond all recognition. So I'm confident that abuse perpetrated by individuals like Burrows within schools or within other institutional settings are far less likely now. But we have had to come to terms with it through the painful experience of the independent inquiry, for the painful experience of some of your contributors to this article tonight. Their abuse lives with them for the rest of their lives. And for some victim survivors, they won't ever want to talk about it. Those that have had the courage and the confidence to come forward are now seeing in cases like this that justice can be done.
Yes, I mean, some just can't talk about it because they've since passed away and they won't see him brought to justice. He'll be sentenced next month, but you'd imagine, given his age and given how many counts he's been found guilty of, he's never going to be let out.
I would anticipate a substantial sentence, and bearing in mind his age, I would suggest it's highly, highly unlikely that he would ever breathe free air again.
Simon, I really appreciate your time for joining us. Thank you very much indeed for talking about this evening. Still to come here on the UK Tonight. Newcastle and their decades-long, well, generations-long, let's be honest, wait for a trophy. We'll find out how the fans have still been celebrating. Welcome back. The NHS Trust that failed to stop the killer who was behind the Nottingham attacks has been accused of failing other victims. The family of a man who stabbed to death just months earlier has told Sky News the Nottingham victims would still be alive, they think, if the authorities had listened to them. They've been speaking to our social affairs correspondent, Becky Johnson.
In the early hours of this morning, an armed attacker stabbed 2 students here, then stole a van, killed its owner.
As news emerged of the deaths of Ian Coates, Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar across Nottingham, this family already knew the killer would turn out to be a mental health patient.
I just had a sinking feeling, an emptiness. I felt devastated. You know, the Nottingham attacks wouldn't have happened if they'd listened to us.
Less than a year before paranoid schizophrenic Valdo Calacane carried out the attack, Delvin's brother, Brenton, was stabbed to death by his own son. Rudy Marriott had grown increasingly violent as his mental health declined. His family had repeatedly called the police and tried to get help from the NHS, but say their warnings were ignored.
Brent, in my eyes, is a hero because that could have been anybody that Rudy attacked. He could have gone out and gone on a frenzied attack. And we just feel like we've just been failed by the NHS, by the police, by the mental health service.
I knew he was dangerous. I was living with him.
Rudy's mother says they questioned why her son wasn't being sectioned.
How do you feel about the fact that he wasn't given any help for his mental health?
I'm devastated because I've lost 2 of them. I've lost his dad. He was my best friend for 35 years. My best friend. And I've lost my son, who up until his illness was very loving.
Rudy was sentenced to a hospital order after a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia.
I'm scared for him when he realises what he's done, because he loves his dad.
A domestic homicide review is examining what more could have been done to prevent it. In the 4 years before Valdo Calacane took a knife onto the streets of Nottingham, there'd been 15 other serious violent attacks carried out by current or former patients of the same mental health trust. If lessons had been learnt, would Barnaby and Grace have made it safely home that night? Would Ian still be enjoying time with his grandchildren? Key questions for the public inquiry into their deaths.
I think that we've seen over a number of years multiple failings within the NHS Trust. We need to get to the bottom of why they happened, who's responsible for that, and to have some genuine change.
The NHS Trust has offered condolences to Brenton's family. The police said their thoughts are with them. Both said they couldn't comment further due to the ongoing domestic homicide review.
This is just a ticking time bomb, waiting for another disaster.
It's an epidemic in our society, and as a result of the broken system, the public are at risk.
They believe public safety must be prioritised when treating mental illness. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Nottingham.
Now, Newcastle United's players and fans are recovering after the club's 56-year wait for a major trophy finally ended yesterday. They beat Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final at Wembley Stadium, sparking wild celebrations amongst fans in London and, of course, at home in the Toon. Some of the squad have gone straight on international duty, including the goal scorer Dan Burn, who's reporting to the England camp for the first time. The rest of the squad left their hotel this morning on the way back to Newcastle. And speaking to Sky Sports News, manager Eddie Howe reflected on the team's place in history.
We feel we deserve to win the game, and I think that's what makes it all the more satisfying. I think winning the trophy was, of course, our #1 objective, but then you want to play well and you want to do yourself justice. For the players were magnificent yesterday. To a man, I thought we were really committed, gave everything, and now we get to enjoy the rewards of that for a few days.
Yeah, there was so much emotion last night, wasn't there? Even from yourself, and you don't normally get like that. The players, there's lots of tears from the fans. You can just sense for everyone connected to the club how much it means.
Well, I think we're an emotional football club anyway. I think there's a lot of extreme emotions after wins and defeats, but I think the long wait for a trophy has been there for everybody. So it's great to be able to be the team that has ended that long spell, and I think with that becomes a sort of a release from everybody. So I think we'll, as I say, try and enjoy that for a few days and then get back to work.
And the first one's always the best, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the first, just the emotions were so real and so raw. So yeah, yesterday's such a memorable day, such a great day. You have so many lows in football, so you have to enjoy the highs when they come.
Joining me now is the Telegraph's Northern football writer, Luke Edwards. Luke, it's good to see you. The producer of the UK Tonight, Neil, is also a Geordie, and he's been parading around today in his Newcastle United shirt, and he hates it when Geordies like me call it the Toon. So how is the atmosphere in the Toon?
Feral, wild, unabashed, unashamedly so. I got dropped off at Newcastle station about an hour and a half ago, and it was warming up for night 2 of the celebrations, I think, mixed in with St Patrick's Day as well. It's a party city at the best of times, but look, I've covered the club for over 20 years, and I've been waiting for this moment. So, Kevin, forget what the people have been waiting 70 years to celebrate a trophy. They're definitely letting it all out and they're enjoying themselves. And I would expect the celebrations to continue for some time. The club tonight have announced it's going to be some sort of parade coming up soon as well. So, yeah, I don't think the party will stop for a while. You are clearly, by your accent, an incomer, but I know you've been there for a long time, precisely because of the passion. It's a one-club city. They've been waiting, but they were already waiting for this a long time when you first moved there. Yeah. And it's taken even longer. Now the moment has finally happened. Is there some sort of a release in Newcastle? Is it just, you know, the time has come now? I think there's enormous pride, and I mean, you've alluded to it there, but I came to Newcastle University, and I was a football-obsessed teenager. And when I started in this job, I wanted to write about a football club that really mattered to the people. And I really got that sense to Newcastle, and turned down jobs in London to stay up here because I thought in the early noughties they were close to winning a trophy. It's been a long time coming, but yeah, just relief. I think there's enormous pride. The fans have really taken to manager Eddie Howe. He's a very humble guy, very hard-working. He's kind of understood what the football club means and what the people want to see from their football club. So I think they're very, very happy that he's been the man to end it, but also this group of players as well. Again, very hard-working, very humble, very honest. And I just think it's just been... I think most fans went to Wembley more in hope than expectation, but they were absolutely magnificent as well. From the moment they drowned out "You Never Walk Alone" before kick-off, the scarves twirling above their heads, and as ever with Newcastle, the team tends to play at its best when it feeds off the energy of those supporters, and they were magnificent in Wembley. And yeah, I mean, judging by some of the state, some of the people coming back on the trains today from London, I don't think a lot of people have gone to bed. So a wonderful occasion, and it will live long in the memory. It really will. A lot of people watching are not football fans, and they couldn't really care less about this until I mention a story of Dan Burn, which I think is a truly inspiring one. He is from Blythe, which is just up the road from Newcastle. Yeah. He's a boyhood Newcastle fan, idolised Alan Shearer, played for the club as a boy, and then got released at, I think he was only at 11, which can destroy any 11-year-old's confidence if that happens. He went from club to club. Brighton he ended up at, and then got signed again by Newcastle, and then he scored yesterday. That's an incredible story. Yeah, pushing trolleys in Asda, age 16. I think he sort of spent his entire career thinking that he was never going to play for the club. When the takeover happened, I think he said to his dad, "Well, that's my chance of playing for Newcastle finally over." He was still clinging on to it at 29. And that goal, I mean, if Dan Burn, if you went to Dan Burn 9, 10, 11 years old and said, if you get to a cup final, you've got to have the perfect game. You've got to give absolutely everything for the shirt. He was impeccable at both ends of the pitch. He played like the local boy. He knew exactly what it meant. And I will remember that first goal for as long as I live, and seeing his face afterwards. He couldn't quite believe what he'd done. It's just one of those magical stories of a young boy dreaming of playing for his football club, dreaming of getting to a cup final. Not only did he get to a cup final, he scored in a cup final, and then won the club's first trophy in 70 years. So it's absolutely magical what Dan Burn has done, and one of those stories that only football can throw up, really. Luke, you mentioned the takeover. Of course, the club's backers are the Saudi Public Investment Fund, the richest club in the world, really, with that kind of backing. Now, look, we're not going to go over all the controversy of that happened at the time, but still, you would expect now, having got one trophy in the bag, with that kind of backing and the possible signings that can be made, that it's the start of something. Yeah, it's one of those myths. They've got the richest owners in the world, but the Premier League's profit sustainability rules work as intended. They've been stopped from sort of putting that sort of money in that we've seen before with Roman Abramovich at Chelsea and with the Abu Dhabi ruling family owning Manchester City. So the rules have worked. Newcastle's progress has been much more gradual, and they've had to work. Eddie Howe's done wonders with inherited players. So I think they will hope this is the start of a trophy-winning dynasty, but I don't think Newcastle are ever going to be another Manchester City. I just can't see that happening. But they needed to get the first trophy. They needed to get that monkey off the back. We talked about curses. We talked about a football club that had a gypsy curse put on it in 1955 that it would never win another trophy. Well, all that rubbish has gone, and they've got that first trophy. And they will be hoping to the first man, and they've got a wonderful manager in Eddie Howe as well. Can't stress that enough.
Well, Luke, I have to say, as a Liverpool fan, it's been difficult just talking to you about it for the past 5 or so minutes. But credit where credit's due. Newcastle is such a well-supported club. There's a kinship, I think, almost between those two clubs because of where they're based and the background to the cities and everything else. But well done, Newcastle. They definitely deserved it last night. And Luke, thanks to you.
Pleasure.
That was hard to say. Coming up on the UK tonight, the Princess of Wales celebrates St Patrick's Day in true style, but did she manage to split the G? Find out after the break. Plus, in the sport, another St Paddy's Day celebration, this time for Rory McIlroy as he claims the Players' Championship for a second time.
Here we go.
2, 1.
Thank you, Sophie.
The big announcement.
The battle for number 10.
The drone is above us.
It is a chaotic scene.
They've asked us to leave.
It was a clear Labour landslide.
The car is covered in.
Liberated but left in ruins.
A major incident has been declared.
That's when misinformation floods the zone.
It became clear the media weren't welcome.
These extraordinary images.
Must have taken years.
Who wants to talk about politics? OK, stand by.
I wouldn't be asking it if I didn't think it was a relevant question.
The winner of the 2024 presidential election.
Quite extraordinary events.
There are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by dozens of French police officers on the beach. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble. Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
In February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. Thousands of Russians were drafted. For some, the reality of frontline warfare meant one thing: desertion.
I had a rush of adrenaline. It was a kind of treason.
But they did not escape on their own.
I help people to desert Russian army.
The stakes are high, but for some, there's no other option.
We keep going till Putin's regime is over.
Escaping Putin on Sky News.
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Sky News gets the full story first. It's legal to let go.
Set the speed and take the hands off.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Welcome back. Coming up, the Princess of Wales marks St Patrick's Day properly as she visits the Irish Guards. We mean by drinking a certain black drink, if that's what we mean by properly. First, though, Chris is here with the sport. Chris, a long overnight wait for Rory McIlroy, but he finally got his hands on what is known as golf's fifth major, and he got it for a second time.
Yeah, the Players' Championship, the flagship event on the PGA Tour. I wonder if Rory McIlroy will be splitting the G, winning that on St Patrick's Day, which was popular among his countrymen, of course. He had to come back for a Monday finish because yesterday play was interrupted by lightning storms in Florida, so they lost a good few hours. And then both he and JJ Spawn finished 12 under par in this one, so they had to do a 3-hole playoff. He opened up a Two-shot lead after the first hole, but it really was settled on this middle hole, which we'll show you now. The 17th, the famous island green. There you can see it. Nothing but water everywhere. It looks like a good shot, doesn't it? Look at that shot tracer. Right on target. Too far. He's in the water. Oof. Off the back. So JJ Spawn, needing to better Rory McIlroy, goes and dunks the ball in the water. He took 6 on a par 3, so he went further behind Rory McIlroy, who was already ahead at that point. Ultimately meant all Rory had to do was go down the final hole and make sure he bettered him. This is the moment he rolled it in for his second Players' Championship, his 28th win on the PGA Tour. And it means, as we head towards Majors season, which is only 3 weeks away, Rory once again will go to the Masters with all the eyes and all of the focus on the world on him, wondering if he can get it done.
Because that is a major, and it's long over. He's won them before, right? But it's been a long time.
So he's won the other 3.
Yeah.
He's won the US Open, the Open Championship, and the PGA Championship. He has never won the green jacket that you get for winning the Masters at Augusta. He's had near misses. He's had 7 top 10s. He was second in 2022, and I don't know if you remember back in 2011 when he led by 4 going into the final round.
I don't.
He had a meltdown, absolute meltdown, and it's left scar tissue. He's got 3 weeks to get his head clear. As it is, he's not planning to play any golf. There's 2 events in Texas, 1 in Florida. Maybe he'll add 1 more week in just to make sure he's ready to go. Good luck to Rory for the Masters. Here's the rest of the sport.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
I remember when I first went on trial at under 9, I just couldn't concentrate. There'd be like games going on and I'd be looking over there. I just went off and played club football for a while, went back at under 11s, under 12s. And yeah, I had a lot of ups and downs. There was times where I was 16, you know, when you want to go out and stuff like that. And that's when you truly have to make sacrifices that I found it really difficult. Once I got my feet on the ground and worked hard, then yeah, the journey through the youth team was much easier.
You spent time on loan at Western-super-Mare. Did the progression from there always seem straightforward?
I always take things, you know, day by day and not look too far ahead. So I was just focusing on progressing and just trying to cement myself in the first team because I didn't see myself as a first-team player then. Yeah, I was just trying to focus on playing, you know, a lot of games and improving and then see where that took me.
And then the moves came, of course, Brentford first and then Aston Villa.
I can remember Brentford, they wanted me the season before, but they said I'd be going into the B team and I didn't want to do that, so.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Now, there was a distinctly Irish look for the Princess of Wales today. She celebrated St Patrick's Day at a barracks in central London. Princess Kate, wearing green and sporting a corsage of shamrocks, greeted officers of the Irish Guards, as well as their ceremonial wolfhound, before partaking in just a half of the black stuff. But the question is, did Her Royal Highness manage to split the G?
3 cheers for the colonel in the regiment! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Now get into you, boys.
I think the answer is no, but that soldier looked like he split the G, which is getting the line right in halfway across the G of the Guinness, just in case you didn't realise. Let's have a look at the weather.
The ideal atmosphere, whatever the altitude. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Much of this week should be sunny and warm thanks to an area of high pressure which is dominating the weather right now. Today has been pretty cloudy for most places so far, with a keen wind in the southwest, which has made things feel pretty chilly. However, clearer skies are now pushing in from the North Sea. Overnight, those skies will clear across much of Britain, and this will allow the temperatures to drop away, giving many places a widespread frost. Ireland and Northern Ireland, meanwhile, will stay rather cloudy, which will largely keep the temperatures above freezing.
The perfect climate, whatever the forecast. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
That's all for now from the UK Tonight. You can catch up on all the highlights online. Up next, it's The World with Anna Botting. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.